Okay, so let's get started by creating a project. You can use anything, Android Studio or Visual Studio Code. I'll go ahead with Android Studio. You guys can also create a project or just watch me build things. So once Android Studio is open, you can see this button to create a new Flutter project. Initially, it will ask where this project can find the Flutter SDK. So this is already predefined, no need to change. Uh, Now we're supposed to give the name. It can be anything, but it has to be lowercase and without spaces. Here you have to select. We know that Flutter is used to create applications for Android, iOS, Linux, macOS, web, and Windows. But today we'll just create for Android and iOS. So I'll unselect these, and that's it. Okay. So once the project has been created, these are all the files Flutter has generated so that we are able to build mobile applications. This file .dart is created by Dart to manage its dependencies, etc. This .idea file is created by the IDE, which is Android Studio here. Now this is important, the Android folder. Um, this is where all the code and build script is written to be able to run the app on Android devices. Build.gradle and uh, all these files, Gradle wrapper, are important for our app to be able to run on Android devices. Same for iOS. iOS has files. Uh, Mainly, we always interact inside the lib folder. Here is where the main function, main part of the Flutter is you will write to make applications. Test folder is just an extra thing provided by Flutter as a good practice to always have tests in your project. But this is not necessary, we can delete it. Is everyone following until now? Okay, so now that we have all the basic file ready, let's start. This is the boilerplate code initially set up by Flutter. I'll go ahead and run this. Okay, there are two ways to run your Flutter project. One is you can use a physical device and connect it to your laptop and run it on your device, on your local mobile phone. Or you can use a simulator on your laptop. I'd recommend not to use the simulator unless you have a very high-end laptop with high RAM specifications. I am currently using a physical device. I'll present it once the app is built. The first build usually takes a long time. After that, the builds are faster. While this is building, I'll show you the greatest resource to learn Flutter. Um, it is the Flutter docs. This is the link for it. Um, okay, so this is the main documentation page of Flutter. Here you'll find everything you need to build and to uh, perform API calls, even about your editor, um, like tools and editors. You can find tips and tricks like how to code faster in your IDE. It is still building, so we'll have to wait a couple more minutes. I'll show you how to just get started reading the docs because I feel docs is the best way to learn any new framework. Um, for Flutter, you can just start by going to the widget catalog. You can see, first start with the basic widgets. And then just click on anything you like and read about it. Um, like they usually almost for all the widgets they give code and you can run it and always check the demo here. So it's very easy to understand the docs and it makes your life very easy. Cool. So the app has been built and I'll share my screen. Okay, so let's start. Whenever you run a Flutter code, the first thing that gets called is the main function. It is right here. You can find it inside the lib folder, the main.dart. Here in the main function, there's this function called run app. This is what runs the app. It's very clear from the name. Now in Flutter, you have to understand that everything is a widget. Every small piece of UI you see on the screen is a widget. You put widgets together to make the entire app. The entire app is a widget. As you can see, I'm running this class, my app. My app class is a widget, stateless widget. There are two kinds of widgets, stateless and stateful. I'll come to that later. Here, all this part is unnecessary. I'll just remove the comments. Okay. Now, whenever you have a widget, here, for example, the my app widget, there's a build function. This is necessary whenever you create a widget. This is what renders the widget on your phone. This function build is responsible for rendering the widget on your phone. Now, if you want to create an app, you will always have to mention material app. This is how just Flutter is. There's nothing else to it. You have to mention material app. You'll see that material app is another widget which has certain properties. For example, the home property which we are using. Now, this home property also has you can you put widgets inside a widget, like I said. So you have to mention another widget for this home property. Now, home is the first screen that will open. So my home page here is given as the first screen for this material app. Now, as you can see this in the same way, same as my app, my home page is also a widget, which which also has a build function here. Now, this build function is returning a scaffold. Scaffold basically is a blueprint of the entire screen that will be rendered. You can find various things like app bar just here or the main body which is right here. These are all inside the scaffold widget. You have to understand that every widget has certain properties and in those properties you put certain widgets and those widgets will also have certain properties where you can put widgets. So it's like a tree. This was the code written by Flutter when you generate the project, but we don't need this. I'll start everything again. So yeah, you must always have a run app function to be able to run your app in the main function. Now this run app function is expecting a widget, just like it says here in the docs. Whenever you hover on any piece of code, you'll usually find docs related to it, um, and it is expecting a widget, right? So we'll create a widget first. Um, in Flutter, there's a very useful macro STLESS, which is used to create stateless widgets. This is the boilerplate code you have to write to create a stateless widget. The build function is important and the name of the class and everything. Yeah, so I'll give it my app, and let's start by like I said, material app. It's the first thing you have to use to make apps. Now, material app has various properties. You can set navigation in material app. You can give the home screen these, and you can set themes for the entire app. But we'll just go ahead with home, and as you can see, home is also expecting a widget. So we'll give this another widget which we'll have to create, and let's call it I'll type STLESS, and when I press enter, it generates some code for me. I'll enter, let's say, home home screen. Okay. Now let's go ahead by making some normal UI. The first widget I'll introduce to create UI is the column widget. Most widgets are single child widgets, but column is a widget where you can give multiple children. I'll show you how. This is it. You can look, it is expecting a list of widget. I hope you know what a list is. List is just like an list is an array basically. You can have list of integers, you can have list of strings. Just similarly, there's list of widget. Okay, I'll have to run this new app again. Since this home is empty, I'll just put home screen here. This is how I'm referencing to the class home screen, which I want to be shown on the app. And here I want to run my app because this is where material app lies, and this has to be the starting place. Okay. This command is used to run your Flutter app. Some of the common widgets that we use to make apps are containers, columns, rows, um, gesture detectors, which are used to detect when a touch happens on the screen, um, and text fields, which is where you can take inputs from the user. These are the common widgets. And once the app is built, I'll just show you how easy it is to create UI from Flutter. Okay, I hope you can see the app running. Right now, it is just a black screen because there's nothing. Uh, there's no widget. It's just a column containing nothing. But as I mentioned before, scaffold is scaffold is a widget which is the blueprint of the entire app. So it is you always have to put it. Now I can save this, and I hope you can see the terminal. I'll just increase the font size. So there are few things: hot reload and hot restart. This is exclusive. When you go native programming, as in build just for Android and just for iOS, you won't find these very helpful features. Um, hot reload is hot reload is a function which is called when you want to uh, show the changes you have made in your code on the screen. Like whenever I press hot reload, the changes will be moved onto the UI. What usually happens is in Android programming, you have to kill the app, build it again to be able to reflect the changes of your code. But just by pressing small r, I'm able to change the screen of my UI. This now it went from black to white because I added a scaffold. The default color of scaffold is white. That's why. Now suppose I give this an app bar. Now app bar is expecting another widget, right? And app bar is this app bar property is expecting a widget. So for that app bar, another class which is a widget. See the difference between property and widget. App bar is the name of the widget, and app bar, this one, is the name of the property which belongs to the scaffold, right? So this app bar also has certain properties. Let's say title. Now you can see title is also expecting a widget. So you have to give another widget. I'll give text. Text is a widget, and I'll say hi. Now, if I go and press hot reload, we are able to see hi on the screen. And let's center it. There's another property, center title, bool. It is expecting a bool right here. Bool is just boolean. It's true or false. I want it to be centered, so I'll just give it true. Now once I save it, it's there in the center. Next, let's go ahead and give the body to the scaffold. Now, body is not part of the app bar. Body is part of the scaffold. So I'll give body. And inside this body, let's give column first because I want a lot of widgets inside my body. So column can contain more than one widget. So I'll put this. Use column. Now column has a property children. This is where you specify all the widgets you want to be placed inside a column. Let's go ahead and place a container. Now I can give height and width to this container. 100, width 100. Now inside this container, I want a text to be displayed. So for that, I have to specify a child. Child is how you give a next widget to the parent widget, which is the container in this case. Child, and I'll give a text again as I used above in the app bar. Text and just say 1. Okay. Now if I press hot reload again, I got it. It's because the default color of this text is also white. Let me change the color of the container to say red. I hope you can see 1 over there. The font size is too low, so I'll just increase it. Style, text style, font size, 32. It's larger now. So as you can see, there are a lot of properties for each widget. Um, Now you might be wondering, how do you find these properties? It's always one Google search away. That's the only way you know, to get to know Flutter. And you don't need to memorize everything. You just have to keep Googling and using it. Because for the most common cases, there's always a property. Because like increasing the text size is a very common thing. So there'll definitely be a property for it. Next, now you can see the container is touching the end of my screen. I want it to be in the center. So what I can do is this contains a property main axis alignment. Column contains a property main axis alignment. And I can give it main axis alignment or center. So this will center all the children inside the column. First important thing is main axis inside the column is the vertical axis. Cross axis is the horizontal axis for a column. So I can give center again. You'll see the container. If that's not working, we can add a center widget. We can wrap. Okay. VS Code provides an important feature, which is once you've created a widget, and sometimes you might want to add a widget on top of that widget. So, the, so removing that widget and the new widget you wanted to enter, put, you type that and give it a child and paste that widget is a lengthy process. Yeah, it is centered. So what VS Code has is you can press Control and dot. It will give options like wrap with widget, which does the exact same thing I did just now by wrapping it with center. So the column is in the center now. The container is in the center. Let's go ahead and add another widget. Let's add a button right below the container. The button will also be a container. Now this container will have a child, which is a text. And font size, trig of style, text style, font size. Okay, now you can see the buttons are very close. So I'll just give some space. Size box is another widget which is similar to a container, but it has very few properties, only height, width, and child. It is used to create space between two widgets inside a column. Okay, so now you can see two things. But when I press the blue button, nothing happens. That's because there's nothing to detect the tap. So I'll wrap this container with gesture detector, which is another widget given by Flutter. Now it has property on tap. There are a lot of properties on tap, on double tap, on long press, but we'll just use on tap. And now, as you can see, it's expecting a function. For the first time, we're seeing not a widget, but a function. So you have to give a function. Now, this syntax is how you declare anonymous functions, as in functions without any names, just function containing pure code. I'll just write print uh, tap detected. Yeah. So now once I reload this and press me, I can see tap is detected. Yeah. So this. Now let's go ahead and introduce state management. Wait, before that, let's center this text. I'll wrap it with center. It is an option and reload. You can see one is in the center. Now you'll see a lot of squiggly lines, blue color here. That's because we're not adding the const keyword. It is const keyword is used with widgets so that whenever the parent class home screen here, whenever the build function is called again, if the screen is already rendered, the widgets with const won't be destroyed and rebuilt because it is a constant part of the code, right? So there's no need to destroy it and build it again. Just keep let it be. Just change the parts which are necessary. That is the parts without const. Now let's add some functionality to this uh, app. What we can do is introduce a variable and I is equal to 1. Okay. Now um, I'll instead of this one, I'll place I. This is the syntax. Now there's a red line here. There's an error here because I'm putting const. Whenever you put variables, that part of the code is not constant, so you'll have to remove it. Yeah, you'll still see one on the screen, but it just showed with the I variable. Now on tap, let's try to let's just increase the value of I. I is equal to I plus 1. Okay, and also print I. Now when I press the button in the terminal, we can see i's value has increased, but not on the phone. That's because once this build function is called, it is obviously never called again because this part of the code has already been executed, right? So what you need to do is after updating the I variable, you have to recall this build function so that the entire part is built again. And here inside the text, instead of 1, which was the previous value of I, 2 is rendered. Now, to rebuild, to recall the build function, you cannot use stateless widgets. You have to use stateful widgets. Uh, VS Code again provides option to convert the stateless to stateful widget, and this has been done. Okay, so once I'm inside a stateful widget contains a function called setState. This function just executes whatever is inside the curly braces and then calls the build function again. So if I hot reload, the changes have been pushed to the phone. Now I press the button. You can see that the value on screen is also incrementing. This Now let's go ahead and build an actual app. The two main things which you do as a app developer is building UI and API calls. That's like 80% of the work. Now we have some idea about how to build UI. Let's go ahead and do API calls. For that, we need an important package. Now, once I have this, I create a new file, API calls dart, and I'll import the package. Mm, Okay. First of all, we need uh, an endpoint to hit, right? So there's a public API of this is public API. We'll be using this to show the API calls. Now let's create a function. This will be an asynchronous function. Okay, what I've done here is I've used the get function inside this package HTTP, which is used to perform get calls, and I've given this URL. Uh, Pokemon. Now, this function returns a future of response, um, which which is another. This response is another data type or inside this package. This response basically contains whatever the API is going to give you, return you. Let's go ahead and just print this response to the body, just the body part. We don't need the extra stuff. But we haven't called this function anywhere, so I'll just call it inside this blue color button. And no need to set state for now. Get Pokemon hot reload, and I have pressed the button, and this is the response I got from the endpoint. It's not showing everything because there's a limitation of characters on how much print statement can print. Okay, so we have this response. I'll, uh, this is the Dart developer tools, which makes it easier for us to see what's happening in the API calls. You can see the response here. We got a 200 status code. This is the response, which contains a lot of nested things. Now, once we have the response, um, this response.body is a string. This string is JSON, right? Because that's how HTTP calls work. Now, the important thing is we want this is a string what we are getting, right? Response.body is a string. But we know that 1302 here is a number. We want it to be as an integer, not as a string. So for that, we use a function called JSON decode. JSON decode this response. Now, this JSON decode returns a dynamic data type. But we can see here that from the response, we can see that it will be a map. Map is basically a dictionary in a equivalent to Python's dictionary. Map is equivalent to Python's dictionary. So we can see this is a map containing key value pairs. So let me define a map. Map is equal to this. Now, if I print the map, it's the same thing, but now instead of string, it is a map. I can access specific properties of the map, for example, count. This map count, and I'm only printing the count. So once I press, I'll get 1302. Uh, this this endpoint also has a parameter to limit how much data we are getting. I'll just add like 20. We'll get a list of 20 Pokemons now. Now, once we can also see the type of this map count. And press runtime type, and it should be an integer. Yeah, int is printed here. Okay. Now, once you're able to get data, it's a good practice to convert it convert the data to a model. Um, you can create a model like this. Class. Okay, since the results are just containing a name and another URL, we'll just call it data, and we'll initialize some members of the class. Give it string name, string URL. Now create a constructor for it. Okay. Now we'll write a function to convert this map object, this map object to a Pokemon data class member. Uh, this is a design pattern recommended by Flutter to use. Dot from JSON. It basically returns. I'll just Okay. This the first part of the function just says that this function will return an instance of this class. Now this function is expecting a map of the form string and dynamic, which is basically all the keys are strings and values can be anything, right? So we have string, dynamic. A map containing string as the keys and dynamic as the values. Let's call it JSON because that is JSON. And it will return Pokemon. It will return an instance of the class containing the name as JSON name and JSON URL. Basically, the name and URL inside that map. Inside this map. Okay. Now, since we only want the results data, let's go ahead and we know that this results is a list of 20 list, so we can iterate through it. Um, okay, map results. This is a list of dynamic. This is a list of map string. Now I'm iterating through each element of the results and passing it through this function Pokemon data. This element is the map JSON which we get from the API. Now we'll just print results. If I perform the API call again, there's an error saying, okay, map results is a dynamic object. We have to typecast it to map string dynamic. Initially, this was a dynamic thing, but this is the results variable is expecting a list of map of string and dynamic. So we are typecasting the dynamic variable into this. Oh wait, let's create another list, which will be what we're returning from this function. List of Pokemon data. Now, once we have converted the JSON into Pokemon data, we'll add it to the result list. And we can print the result list just to confirm. Now you can see all the JSON has become instance of Pokemon data, which is a class that we created. Okay. And now let's change the return type from void to future list of Pokemon data. Since the result list is list of Pokemon data, and this is an asynchronous function. Okay. Now, when I'm calling this here, okay. Now let's remove the containers And okay, there's another widget which is used mostly when there are API calls called Future Builder. Now this requires a future. Our future will be this get Pokemon function because it's returning a future. Let's give it here get Pokemon, and builder is expecting a function and a snapshot. Okay. Context and snapshot, and it has to return a widget. Mm, let's return center text. Before we return anything, um, we know every API call takes a few seconds before it's completed based on the connectivity strength. So, bef- while we are in the process of getting the response from the API call, we'll show a loading indicator. So, for that, we'll do if snapshot dot connection state is equal to this is if we are still waiting for the data to come, we'll return a widget which is circular progress indicator. It's just a loader. And if 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 we are not waiting, we'll return the data as text on the UI, which we know is a list of Pokemon. Since it is possible that we may not get the response from the API call, that's why this entire variable can be null. So we have to handle null value as well. And since it's a list, we have to convert it to string so that the text is able to accept it. Now you can see it's loading, and we have instances of Pokemon. Now, instead of showing a text, let's show it in the form of a list of widgets, right? So let's remove this child. There's a new widget, listview.builder, which given a count, uh, in our example, count will be snapshot dot data dot length. That is the number of items from the response we get, and a builder, item builder, which takes in the context and index. Context is basically everything, all the data related to the app, like which screen we are on, what's the height and width, etc., of the mobile phone, etc. Now, this can be null. So let's add a question mark. Okay. Now, now this function will be called these many times. So we'll see return text which contains snapshot the data, and we'll use the index. Index is basically the number of iterations has been in. It will start with 0 and go until item count minus 1. Index dot name. Right. We can we can find the name property here because we define the function as list of Pokemon data. So once we are accessing a member here index, every member is of Pokemon data, and Pokemon data contains name and URL as the properties. So yeah, here name. Now if I reload, I should be okay. Whenever there's a list view builder, it cannot be unbounded. You always have to apply constraints. Let's go. So I've given the constraints, and you can see you're able to see the list of Pokemon from an API call. Now, but this is not in the center, so let's just wrap the text with center for some reason. This column is not filling the entire scaffold, so I'll just wrap it with expanded, which will stretch the column to fit as much area as it can get. Still not. Okay. Now, instead of always pressing the button and then getting the API call, let's just get the remove this button and get data when we open the screen. Inside stateful widgets, which the home screen is the stateful widget, there's a function called initState. Now, we know that build is called whenever the UI needs to be rendered for this widget. InitState is always called before the build. Build function is called. So actually, we don't need the init state here because we're already getting the data from future builder. If I restart the app without pressing anything, I'm able to get the data. So that serves the purpose. Mm, Let's modify the app part as well. And let's give it some. Okay. Now we just have the names of the Pokemon. We want we want to be able to get the details of Pokemon. So this URL, which is present inside the map of every Pokemon, should gives the details of this Pokemon. Hmm, Let me copy this and create another function. Again, the same thing. HTTP.response, a data type from the HTTP package. Name of the variable, I'll just give it response. And I'll have to await for this and perform a get call. Okay, with the URL, and then get the map. Let's just, yeah, let's get the map. Decode the JSON, and print the map. And here this. We haven't called this function anywhere. So uh, I forgot to explain how List View Builder works. So for the determined number of count, this function inside the curly braces will run, and it returns a widget. So this widget will be rendered as many times as this number. Now, inside this widget, we are using the data we got from this function get Pokemon, and since it's a list, we're accessing each member one by one and giving it and using its name to render on the UI. So now let's just also add some gesture director here so that uh, we're able to call the next function. Let's style it a little. And okay, um, yeah, gesture director on this container, on this, yeah, gesture director on tap. On tap, we'll call the new get Pokemon details. Okay. Now, if I tap on Bulbasaur, I get the API call from the new URL, which returns me details of Bulbasaur. Hmm. Now let's just use some of these properties, not all of them. We'll use weight, um, we'll use ID, and experience. Now let's create another class to convert the JSON from new endpoint into a class. Pokemon string fake string exit string integer integer. Now let's create a constructor. Okay, same thing. Again, a factory model to convert JSON to Pokemon class. The name of the variable does not have to match the name of the key. Uh, I just I just kept it same, but you can keep it different. Okay, let's just change it. Now we have this. We can pass this map inside this constructor, factory constructor, to get a Pokemon. Right? Pokemon, Pokemon. This is the name of the variable. This is the name of the class. Uh, Pokemon dot from JSON and then give dot JSON. This is the function we wrote. And this is what we called, and we'll print Pokemon. That's it. Yes, we got instance of Pokemon, which is what we wanted. Now, now this function get Pokemon details just calls this endpoint, which is for Bulbasaur. Let's change it so that it can call for every Pokemon. Uh, let's accept a URL, string URL, and remove this URL. And we can get URL from here by using this. Instead of name, we'll access URL. Since it is nullable, we have to remove that, give a default value. Okay, now, okay. Hmm. Now this function should work for all Pokemons, and instead of void, let's return future Pokemon and return Pokemon. Okay, now here we'll be able to access Pokemon, Pokemon, await, async. I added await because it returns a future. We have to wait until this future is completed and we get Pokemon. So for that, await. Pokemon. This is the name of the class. This is the name of the variable. Uh, and we'll just print again Pokemon dot height. So if I type Bulbasaur, I get 7. For Ivysaur, I get 10. And Venusaur, 20. Now let's make it more useful. This app of ours, um, we'll create a new page. This just contains the home screen. Now let's get a new file. Let's call it Pokemon details.dart. This will also have a widget, which is the new screen. mm mm. Let's call it stls. This is a macro which I used earlier. Pokemon details screen. I'll show it again. STLESS is a short keyword which you can type and press enter, which will create the boilerplate code which is necessary for creating stateless widgets. And we can give it the name Pokemon details. And obviously, everything should start with a scaffold because this is a new screen, and the new screen will also have a app bar, body, etc. So we give it a scaffold, and inside scaffold, we will give the body a column. Give the Because again we want to display a lot of things, not just one thing. But okay, for starters, let's just display one thing. Of body, just a sized box um, with child as text. Let's call it something. Hmm. Let's change this. I'll copy the same app bar on our new screen and okay. Okay. Here inside the gesture director, we're performing the API call to get the details of a Pokemon, and right after this, we'll go to the new screen. Okay, this syntax navigator is a class inbuilt in Flutter, has a function of which takes in context, and we are pushing a new screen on it. Screens in mobile phones work like a stack. You keep pushing one screen on top of another, and then you can pop the topmost screen to get go back to the previous screen. So I'll push the Pokemon details widget. Let's change it a bit. Screen, Pokemon details screen, and inside push I have to give a route, and inside builder it takes in context. Context is just what it means, context of everything in the app, and this will return Pokemon details screen. So now, if I hot reload, if I press on any of the Pokemon, I should go to a new screen and I can see details and a back button which came by itself. I haven't mentioned it anywhere in code. This is because this default from app bar widget. This is just default. If you push something, app bar will add a back button. If I press that, I go back to the previous screen. Now, instead of something, I want the details of Pokemon, right? Which I created here. I want the weight, height, and base experience. So how do I pass it? Uh, I can create a constructor for this class again. Um, Constructor is already here. I'll just add more variables. Final int weight, height, experience, and add them as required. Now, when I'm pushing onto a new screen, I can just do experience equal to Pokemon dot base experience. I got this Pokemon variable from this API call, which returns a Pokemon class member, Pokemon. Now, Pokemon contains the property base experience. It contains Pokemon dot height. It contains Pokemon dot weight. Okay. Now we are able to pass all these values as from one screen to the Pokemon details screen. Now let's go ahead and use this. Um, I'll just display weight. Okay, first I have to perform widget. Yeah, weight should work and I should remove const. Okay, weight as an integer, I need to convert it to string. Now, press R. If I go to Squirtle, I can see 90. I'll just enter it once. 300 for Pidgeotto, 100 for this guy. So it is dynamic now, our application. Mhm. Now I cannot add more widgets inside a size box because size box is a single child widget. So I'll change it to column, which gives an option to enter multiple widgets inside a list. So cut this out, give a list, and inside the list, first element will be the weight. Uh, Similarly, I'll just add height and experience. Okay, now I should be able to get everything 120 and I'll also give the title. Okay, so we have kind of a small Pokédex here. Next, let's go ahead and create a search bar for all the Pokemons. Inside the home screen, uh, above this future builder, I'll add a text field. Yeah, text field, and let's just render this. You can see a small line here. I'll give it some constraints. Right now it's occupying everything it can. Give a container and I'll limit it by width to 200. Okay. Now you can see the text field and the future builder are very close to each other. So instead of center, I'll give space between. This equally spaces out all the children of this column. Okay. Now, um, wait, instead of space between, let me just give start. This will just place all the widgets one by one from the top, and I'll give some empty space here equal to, let's say, 20. Okay. Now text field has various properties which can be used to make it look uh, better for UX, like decoration. This a set of predefined properties, and I'll just go search. Okay. I also give some space above. Now, with every text field, we must associate a controller. And first, let's define the controller here. Text editing controller, search box controller. Okay, we are just initializing this class with this variable. Now I'll put this as a controller, search box. And it cannot be a constant since we're giving it a variable. So yeah, now controllers are used for various things. Like once the user fills this, we can use the controller and perform a function like I'll show it here. Okay. Now text field has certain options like on changed, which requires a function. The parameter here is a string with value input. Okay. Now this input is basically what is typed by the user of the phone. Um, so we can use this. Before that, I'll show you what a controller is. Search box controller. It gives various options like to get the text, to get the to clear whatever is inside the input box. Yeah, those are the main functions. Um, what we can do is on change, we'll just print this input and see what's happening. So if I press T H I S, I can see on every change, this part of the code inside the curly braces is being called. So THIS, right? Okay. Hmm. Now let's use this string to filter the list of Pokemons. We can do that here. List Pokemon filter Pokemon takes in a string query and returns and the list Pokemon. All Pokemon returns. Okay. Now we'll perform filtering on the all Pokemon list. It is Pokemon data, not Pokemon. Okay, for each element that if this condition is satisfied, we'll add it to filtered list, and then we can return the filtered list. This should work as a filter function. Hmm. And instead of using the data from snapshot inside, where's the list view? Inside the list view builder, instead of using data from the snapshot, we'll call the function filter Pokemon. Query let it be nothing for now and paste this. Since this returns a list, we can call the dot length function so that this is able to get integer. Next, since we'll be using this list again and again, let's copy it out in a variable. Well, okay. Uh, we'll create a variable here. We'll call it list Pokemon data UI list. This list will be displayed on the screen. Let's call it filter list. Let's change this to filter list. Once this is done, instead of returning, we'll just change the value of this list. Set state filtered list is equal to filtered list is equal to filter list, and let it be void. No need to return anything. Yeah. Now we'll give this filtered list dot length, and mm, and yeah, here. Instead of snapshot dot data, give filtered list. This should work. And once we once we get the data from the future, we'll set filtered set list is equal to snapshot and on any change we'll call the function filter list. We call the filter Pokemon, give it the input, and the list will be filter Pokemon. Okay, this should work. Okay, does not seem to be working. Let's see why. Okay, you might have to remove this. Yeah, now it seems to work. This should fix it. Okay, it works. Hmm. Now we have seen a lot of basic widgets and state management and API calls. Uh, let's go. Hmm. Let's build a login system. Okay, first we'll create the UI for login screen. Hmm. Login screen. Again, STLESS login screen. Give it a scaffold first, then give it a app bar, uh, and now give the widget app bar. Give it a title widget text login, and give it a background colors red. Next, let's give the scaffold a body. In that body, there'll be a column. Now, this column will contain children. Uh, Children will be spaced in the center. Main axis alignment. Main axis alignment dot center. Now now we'll need a stateful widget because we want to perform actions and keep changing state. So let's convert it to a stateful widget and define three controllers. Um, First is text editing controller, login user name controller, text editing controller, and then password controller. Okay. Now let's give two text fields. Let's just copy the same text field. And paste it twice. Let's give it username controller. No need of all changed. Again, let's remove this. Password controller. This should work. Uh, let's keep the same. Let's type username, password here as the hint text, and we'll give it a container with child as a text saying login, and we'll paste this in the center and this color. Hmm. Again, color is not red accent, and okay, let's give it height and width. Height 40, width 80, and Let's give some space. Sized box. Height. Hmm. Height 12. Okay. Should be fine now. Hmm. Okay. Let's write the logic later. First, in the main.dart file, let's let's keep the home screen as login screen and restart the app. Restarting the app calls the run app function again. Now we have a login page. It's stuck to the ends, so let's place them in the center. Hmm. Okay. Text field is occupying as much space as it can, so just restrict the space it can occupy. Container, actually width, and let's give it 400, and we just need a size box. Width 400. Okay. And the changes seem to have not been reflected. Let's just give some padding to this column. This gives padding to both left and right side since I selected horizontal equal to 30. Okay. Mhm. Next, let's add a gesture detector to this container. And then on tap, we'll just print the values of username and password currently inside the text field. Print username controller dot text and print password controller dot text. Let's see. Um, just some random text, and we should get that. Yeah, we got that. Now, usually how login works is you'll send this username and password in a endpoint in a API to the backend. Backend will verify it and send back a JWT. So now we'll create a function, a new API call. Mm, a new API call. Let's create a new file only. API calls login. Uh, Again, import HTTP as HTTP and a new function. Since we don't have a backend right now, I'll just create a dummy API call. Login. It takes the string username. It takes the string password, and it's asynchronous. And it will perform a HTTP call. Let it be simulated by this. future.delayed duration seconds, 3 seconds, and we'll wait for this to finish. This line is basically representing the API call, which will happen to an actual backend. Since we do not have an actual backend, I'm just putting a wait for 3 seconds. And then it should return, let's say true for now, and change it to future bool. Okay. It returns true only if username equal to equal to 1 and also equal to is return true. Return false. Okay, this should work. Now, in the login screen, let's also create a loading indicator. We'll first create a bool. Bool is loading is equal to false. Now, on tap, we'll set state is loading is equal to true. And once the API call is complete, we'll have to wait for this future to complete. That's why I make this asynchronous. And once the API call is complete, is loading is equal to false. Okay. Now we just added the variable. Now let's also modify the UI according to this variable. Here, I can put a ternary operator is loading. If it's true, return circular progress indicator. And if it's false, we'll have the normal button containing the login text. Okay, let's refresh. Let's hot restart. Okay. Now if I press login, I get a loader for 3 seconds and nothing. First, we'll use this value, bool verified is equal to, and then we'll print it. Okay, if I log in now, I should get false. I got false. One, false. If I enter the right credentials and press login, you get true. Okay, now what we'll do is once the user is logged in, we'll we'll push them to the main screen, which is our Pokedex. Mm, we can do that like this. Navigator, first of all, if verified navigator dot of context dot push replacement. We're using push replacement because we don't want the user to be able to come back to login screen by pressing the back button. What push replacement does is it replaces the topmost element of the stack with a new screen. Material. Let's just copy it from. Let's just copy this part. And we'll return Pokemon. What's it called? Home screen, and it has no elements in the constructor. We need to import it, and I, VS Code added it automatically. So yeah, if verified is true, we'll go to a new screen. Okay, I'll restart the app. A new screen. I'll enter 1 and pass login 3 seconds, and we reached Pokedex. For some reason, we're now getting the list of Pokemon within the main function. Okay, I got it. Yeah, we're getting the entire list and should be a working search bar. Hmm. Should work now. Okay, we'll come back to this later. For now, it only works when you have something in the search box. If it's empty, you get the entire list, and once you input any query, it works. Okay, fine. Now, if I restart the app, I'll go back to the login screen again. But we don't want that inside an app. We want the app to remember that the user is logged in. So for this, we will store it locally in the phone's database that the user is logged in. For storing this information, we'll use a package. Um, fl- um, we'll use a package Flutter secure storage. Let's install it. We can install it by pasting this in the terminal. Create a new terminal session and paste it. Enter. What this does is it stores pieces of information corresponding to a key, and whatever is stored is encrypted, so it cannot be found out by people. Now let's check how this works. You have to instantiate it, and that's how you read, and that's how you write. Okay, let's copy this part. Uh, Create a class. Or just okay. Usually, if you're going to use this a lot of times, we create a separate class for this package. Actually, let's just create it again. Let's just create it here anyway. Even if we are using it very like only once, let's just create it. Class and you can give it any name, encrypted storage. That's what I like to call it. And I'll instantiate it here. I'll push this up. Um, there's no need for this new and const. Now let's create functions for this. Void right takes in a string s, string value, string key, comma string value, and it should perform write function just like this. And make it asynchronous, and a read function which will do the same thing. And do the read, we just need the key. We do not. Okay. Now now once we know it is a verified user, we will store it inside the local storage. Encrypted storage dot uh, dot write. The key will be, let's say, is logged in, and value can be anything. It does not matter. Let it be value only. That'll be okay. Fine. Once we have done this, then we can return true, and we have to await for this to happen. Okay. So After pressing login, after pressing the login button, we'll store it in the local storage if it's a successful login and return true. We also need to add a check here that before even running the app, we can perform a few calculations. Um, Say string, which can be null, which can be null, is logged in is equal to encrypted storage dot read ready read dot read. The key which we set here is logged in. Now we have to wait for this. It has to return it. So if the user is logged in, we know that we are storing it. So if I read it, then I'll get okay. But if the user is not logged in, there's nothing stored for this key which I'm trying to access here. So so the value of this variable will be null. It's either going to be null or okay, right? So I can do this. Let's create another. Let's just call it login screen wrapper for now. Let's call it that, and we'll call this, instead of login screen, it'll be home screen. And okay, if s logged in equals to null, we'll send them to the login screen, right? Which will be login screen wrapper, or else we'll run the my app thing, my app widget. So since I'm already logged in, I'll restart. There's a problem. It says we need to ensure widgets by this. What this does is, um, the problem here is secure storage is trying to access native code. But how Flutter works is first it sets up the Flutter engine, then it goes to the native code. Now, this piece of block ensures that Flutter engine has started so that this encrypted storage package is able to now go to the native code. The problem here was native code has not been initialized. Still, we're trying to access native code using this package. That was a problem, and now we have fixed it. Should work. Seems like let me add a logout button. Okay, in the main screen, I'll make it asynchronous first. Then I'll wait, log out, clear, and, and child should be a system icon, so log out. And after this is successful, we will have to go back to the login screen. Uh, Actually start. There is a logout button. I'll tap that. I'm here in the login screen. I'll enter the username and password to log in. Should work. Now, if I restart the app, I should come back to the Pokédex screen again. Yep. So the authentication system is working. Um, Next, let's go ahead and add a nav bar to this app so that we are able to add more navigation features. So inside the scaffold, just like there's app bar, there's body, there's another property called bottom nav bar, bottom navigation bar, and it expects a widget. Bottom navigation bar and items. This expects a list of bottom navigation bar items. Okay, so let's create that first. Or no need. Bottom navigation bar item. I can just let this be anything that really does not matter. Um, okay, this needs a widget and I'm giving it an icon. That's the problem. So I can uh, yeah, this is the first item and let the second item be something else. Let's remove this quickly lines. I think I'll need to restart it. the problem. Okay. It also requires a label which we haven't given. Uh, let's give it cookie text. Let's give it phone label phone pay. Now, as you can see, we have a nav bar at the bottom. Now let's make it working. First, let's separate out our code. It's getting larger. Text screen dot remain dot and I'll just copy this entire part. Okay, not this part. I'll copy this body and paste it in. Okay, I can't do that now. Then okay, since we have only two items here on the nav bar, let's create a new screen. Rename this to phone. Okay, phone pay screen, and then for now, just let's give the scaffold body column same thing again. Children, and let's give it a center child container child text phone pay screen. Okay. Also, let's initialize a variable here. There'll be int current index equals to 0. I think bottom nav bar should have a property of yes. Uh, this bottom nav bar widget has a property of on tap, which I'll be using to perform navigation. So on tap, it uh, expects a function which takes an integer parameter. Let's call it index, and then we'll perform set state. Current index is equal to this index. Uh, this index is basically the position of the bottom navigation bar item which has been tapped. If I tap Pokédex, I'll get 0. If I tap PhonePe, I'll get 1. So I'm changing the current index and I'll write some code here. So I'll add a ternary operator. Current index equal to 1. If it's 1, we'll show PhonePe screen. If it's 0, that is if it is not 1, we'll show the Pokédex screen. And if I restart, it should work now. Yep, it is working. The navigation bar. Hmm. Let's go ahead and add PhonePe to this project. We'll go to the PhonePe docs, check how they want us to set up Flutter SDK integration. Mm, Asking us to copy this URL, paste it in the build.gradle file for Android. So you go to Android, uh, build.gradle, and it is Maven curly braces URL. Okay, and we'll not be doing it for iOS since we can't test it. Add this plugin, PhonePe Payment SDK. I copied it, and then import. Not here. In our PhonePe screen, we'll go and import the SDK. Now, this method, all the information, and okay. Um, this is how you usually integrate payment gateways. You just have to follow the docs and just copy the code, um, and make any changes required according to your needs. Um, so this docs is telling me to init, call the init function first. Okay. Uh, this is the part of the init call. So as I said, uh, init function is called before the build function. Init state is called before the build function. So I'll just initialize it here. Oops. First of all, just this part, right? Okay. Paste this much. Environment value, let's see what that is. This is signified. Production will be considered as default. Okay. Let's go with sandbox. Merchant ID. The merchant ID provided at the phone pay at the time of onboarding. To use payment gateways, you need to register as a merchant with PhonePe. So they create your account, give you a merchant ID and app ID. We do not have it now. I think they should provide some testing merchant ID for us to use. Let's see. I think they should give us a dummy PhonePe merchant ID for us to test. Enable logging. Yes. True. App ID is also provided at the time of onboarding. Okay. To get app ID, pass the dummy value in app ID for the first time, and later the app ID should be from. Okay. You need a merchant ID. We have a merchant ID. This should initialize it, and let's see. Mm, init returns a boolean. Okay. Dot dot then is a function which is called when the future has been completed. So after the future has been completed, we can anything inside the parenthesis will run. I mean curly braces will run. So print the value is dollar value. So I think I'll have to rebuild the app since I installed a new plugin. Flutter run. Until then, it requires us to convert the body to basics. There are a lot of things. They have given us a sample app. Okay. Body convert. This is the code written by the PhonePe team for Flutter developers. So we'll just copy this part of starting transaction. It has to be the same to start transactions. Okay. This takes a body callback checksum and a package name. And then result is a variable they're using, so let's just initialize it. String result doesn't go to somewhere. Handle error, we can just leave that. Leave that. We'll just print error dot string print error dot to string. Now body callback checksum and package name. We'll be using the pay API. These are the things which must be inside the body: merchant ID, transaction ID, amount, user ID. Okay, okay, a lot of things. Hmm. This is an example request, example body. We'll copy this. They have already done it for us. To calculate checksum value. What is a callback? String app schema. And then you get a response. Oh, Okay. We can paste the checksum, the body. Hmm. Package name. Okay. Package name. Optional for iOS. Okay. This can be anything. App schema optional for Android. Custom app schema for the developer. Hmm. Only for iOS. Okay. The package name of the UPI app selected by the user. Okay. Oh, yeah. So I just follow the docs, and some things are only required for Android, and some only for iOS. So whatever is required for Android, I've filled in dummy values for that. And okay, so when I try to rebuild the app after adding payment SDK, it tells me to increase the minimum default version, minimum SDK version. So I can find that here. They've given me the URL, and I'll search for min SDK version. I found it. I'll change it to 21 and rebuild. This should be enough. I'll add a button to call the transaction. On tap, I'll call the start transaction information. Okay. Now phone pay. We'll have to wait some time. Can increase the height of this to height the list view occupies. For some reason, the button has not been rendered. Okay, that is because the color of the text is also white. Change it to should happen now. Okay. Now, once I click on the pay button, what should happen is first of all, did did this init happen? Let's check that. Started init and the value is true. So the value is true. That means we got a the init is successful. Payment phone pay SDK has been initialized. So I think this should also work now. Start transaction. What has happened here is we have taken a body from the PhonePe API. This is the body where they have mentioned everything: the amount of transaction, the test merchant ID, and everything else. These are all dummy things just for developers to test, and we have taken that. We have converted it into base 64 string, and we're using that here. And same, we're calculating some security rules these APIs have. That is using this and a salt key which we get during onboarding and a salt index also, and calculating the final checksum. All this is so that the backend of PhonePe can verify that these transaction requests are coming from a known merchant. So this is done, and this is nothing. Yeah, let's go ahead. Pay. It says fail to notify web view. Key error. Uh, too many requests. Too many requests. Please try again. There seems to be a problem with the PhonePe server.
Might be the merchant APIs will be blocked because of the test credentials used a lot.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So this code should work if we have a merchant ID, we have a salt index and salt key. Uh, it's just that the current given on their website is not working, is banned by them or something. They have disabled it. So once we have the proper merchant ID and then we can replace all these values, we can write functions to convert this body into base 64 string, and then we can write functions to calculate the checksum using this formula, SHA-256 of the encoded string plus the endpoint plus your salt key and then the salt index. So we can write functions for this, and then this should work basically. Okay, so this is it for phone pay. Next, maybe Uh, we can create a profile screen where user can take photos and upload, keep that as their profile picture. Mm. Let's add another item here. Call it profile account profile. Let's create a new screen. Profile screen dot. Mm, stateful widget profile. I type STFUL, press enter, write the boilerplate code. Um, profile screen give. mm, No need for a scaffold this time because we'll be just replacing the widget in the body. We won't be creating another entire screen. All we have to do is just replace the widget that is inside the body. Either this widget, or the new widget which you're creating, the profile screen. So it just has to be a column. Actually, for now, just a container. Container. Search. Circle. This creates a circular container. Child will be just a placeholder for now. And center it at const. And in the main.art, um, using ternary operators is really not a good way to handle this. Instead, what we could have done is created a list of widgets like this, widget options, which contain the screens, Pokédex, uh, phone pay, and profile, like this. These will be the widgets. For example, profile screen would come here, and then we can just give this list, uh, let's say here, widget options, and then current index which we have defined here. But since we have already written some important code here, I cannot separate out the logic, and due to time constraints I'm not doing it. um, so I'll just create a ternary operator inside a ternary operator. Current index equals to 2. Will show will show the profile screen. Wait, this can go up here. Hmm. And let's remove the arrows here and reload. Now we have 3 items in the bottom nav bar, and we can see a profile page. Also, seems that the color is not changing in the bottom nav bar. So we can add logic here. There has to be some property. Yeah, selected icon color, colors don't. Let's go red. Okay, this should current index. What I did is bottom navigation bar widget had a property current index, and I set it to the changing variable which we created here, current index, which changes on tap of a button inside the nav bar. Yeah, seems to be working now. Now radius, let's give it 400. Okay. Now there's this package image picker flutter. Okay. Now what I'll do, on tap of this button, I'll show a prompt asking the user to upload a picture. Cache detector, remove this const, add this const. On tap, uh, can show dialog. This is a Flutter feature to show a pop-up. It requires a function returning a widget and accepts build context. So context widget will return just a container for now. Child will be text. Uh, Upload your photo. So, okay, it is occupying the entire screen. Let's add constraints. Hmm. Okay. Um, Now, when the user taps this button, upload your photo, we can prompt it to go to the camera, which will be done by this package. Installing. Let's see how to set it up. For Android, uh, okay. Let's add a gesture detector here. On tap, we'll do is initialize the class, import this first. We want it to take it from camera. Make it asynchronous. This package can be used to pick images from gallery, uh, take videos from the camera, and also select multiple files from your gallery. Okay, this returns a X file. Uh, can we do? Let's add who is photo taken false, but if the photo is taken, we'll use image dot file, and we we'd like to use this file. Mm, First import, and then set state here. Let's see if there's a conversion. Such X file to file in Flutter. Okay. Before that, let's just print X file dot. Okay. Just give this a dummy value for now, and then change it to photo. It will be non-nullable. Image of file. Still not working. Oh, okay. What I've done is, since this package returns something of the type X file, and Flutter expects a file for its image, not X file. So what I've done is instantiated a dummy X file. Once we get the photo here from the camera picker, we set the image file to that photo, and then instantiate a member of class file with this path. So hopefully it works. Actually start. Audio photo. Unable to. Let's rebuild that. There was some platform exception. Hopefully it's because of not rebuilding the app. It says here no configuration required. Still. uninstall the old version. Okay, hopefully it works now. Seems to be working. And if I take a photo, oh, we also have to set is photo taken equal to true so that we are able to display this part. Okay, so we have it here. Let's just fix it first. This should work. That's it. So we have a working profile page. We can add other details like name, etc., but that's the same as login page, kind of. Now to make this image persist, you'll have to save it somewhere in the phone storage. To do that, I'll just send a link for it. It's very simple. You just have to get the path and save the path inside your local storage. And in the main function, just read that path using encrypted storage, and then get the image here, and then pass it on to the screen. It's just that much. This is all I had prepared for.